Hey guys, it's October the 28th, 2025, and I hope everybody's been having a wonderful day so far today. It's another nasty day here in South Carolina. It's cold. It's been raining all day again. It rained all night last night. Everything's just soaking wet. It's been overcast all day long. And did I mention it's cold? I'm freezing out here right now. Ever since I lost all the weight after I got sick, I just get cold all the time. I don't know if it has to necessarily do with the fact that I lost all the weight too. I think because I'm on blood thinners as well. They're not doing it right now, but like my knuckles will turn purple and my feet will start turning purple and stuff like that when I get really cold. I don't know. I think it might have to do with the blood thinners. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I used to get hot all the time. I was always hot. Now this is back when I was drinking too, which I'm sure played a big role in that. But now I'm always cold. I get cold during the summertime. It's insane that I went from always being so hot. Always had to have a fan on or the air conditioner blasting. I used to crank my AC down to like 67 degrees and I would still be hot. I couldn't even imagine doing something like that now. Like I said, I get cold in the summertime. If I go into somewhere that's, they've got the AC blasting, I'll have to go. I usually keep a jacket in my vehicle just for situations like that. Because like I said, I get cold so much, but anyway, let's go ahead and dive into today's video. And what I wanted to talk about today is a pretty good idea, I think. I was thinking about this earlier today. I was just kind of rolling around some ideas in my head, and I had a couple other ideas I was thinking about. And usually I'll start like playing out the video idea in my head and what I want to talk about. And, I'll get to a certain point and I go, nah, I don't really want to talk about that. And sometimes, too, I'll just get these, I'll get an idea or a thought in my head. I'm like, I have to talk about this today. Just something tells me like I need to talk about this. Or a lot of times as well, I'll have somebody in the comments that'll say, hey, would you mind discussing this? It really just depends. But today, I don't even know where this idea even came from. I was kind of thinking in my head about, just going to bars and things like that. And I was trying to think of something that I could talk about that had to do with going out to a bar. And what I thought of and what I'm going to title today's video is Last Call for Alcohol. And the reason I want to talk about this today is kind of a strange idea, but it does play into this, and I'll get to that. It really has to do more or less with, glad that we're sober again today, because this is just one of those things about drinking that just sucks. I mean, just to be completely honest with you. And, like I said, I want to talk about last call for alcohol today. How many times have you heard that in your lifetime? Especially, you go to some bar and, you've been hanging out all night long and this is the last stop of the night. You are at the final stop of the night. This is that last dive bar that stays open until, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, or they stay open all night long or whatever it is. Like I said, you're at the last stop of the night. This is the last bar that's going to serve alcohol, and then they say those words, those words that nobody wants to hear, especially a person with AUD, and that's last call for alcohol. You're sitting there trying to just enjoy yourself, and you hear that bell ring, ding, 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 and it's last call for alcohol. And a lot of times, they'll say some smart alecky thing or something like that. And, if you've spent a lot of time in bars like I have, I'm sure that majority of you guys watching this have. A lot of times the bartenders they're not very nice when when it's last call, especially if there's still a lot of people hanging out in the bar because they're ready to go home. They've made their money for the night and they're ready to get out of there. And if there's still a bunch of people hanging around that won't go, they're going to be nasty because they want you to get out of there. They want to get your glassware. They want to clean up where you're sitting at, and they want you to go. And for me, you know, anytime that they would call last call, and this is one of the things that I thought about that really made me want to talk about this today, because I know there's going to be people out there who are going to be able to relate to this. And this is one of those, you know, things where, you know, I'm so glad that I'm sober today. And I'm sure after I talk about this, you're going to be glad that you're sober today as well, because, you know, you don't have to deal with this anymore. And, you know, like I said, what that is when the bartender calls for last call, and you get that panic that sets in right away, because you're like, holy crap, what am I going to do now? You know, I don't want to go yet, and I want to continue to drink. So you rush up to the bar and buy like 4 drinks, 5 drinks, whatever it is. And you say, oh, these are for, I'm grabbing a round of shots for everybody, or I'm buying everybody beers at the table really quick. And you're lying. Those beers, all that alcohol is for you. And this is what I used to do when I used to go out to the bar. And I used to hear last call, I mean, every time I went out. Because when I went out, you know, majority of the time I'd already been at work. You know, I was in the restaurant industry. So, you know, we'd close the restaurant down. Let's say we got out of there at 1 a.m. Well, we go to the next bar that was open. There was one that was right down the road from the last restaurant that I worked at. And we would just run down there really quick. And they closed at, I think, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And we'd go down there and hang out. But, you know, at some point, you know, we would hear that last call. And I would jump up as soon as they called last call and run up to the bar, like I said, and I would buy as many drinks as I thought that I could get, without looking like they were for me. You know, a lot of times too, I would just buy like 5 shots, or however many people were with me, I would just buy that many shots. And then I'd go back to the table and I'd drink them all myself. Or I'd get, you know, 5 shots and 2 beers or something like that. I tried to make it easy on the bartender, but I knew that I could grab enough alcohol to like really catch a solid buzz before it was time to leave. But, you know, it's just absolutely ridiculous, you know, that I used to do that. You know, anytime that I went to a bar and they called that last call, I had to go up there and buy as many drinks as I could, so that I wouldn't be sitting there empty-handed. Because, you know, just because they called last call doesn't mean that everybody's got to get up and go right that instant. You know, last call is usually, you know, right at closing time, or a few minutes before closing time, or something like that. You know, most restaurants or bars, just because they called last call doesn't mean you have to leave right at that moment. You know, they might give you another half an hour, another hour. A lot of times they'll let you hang around while they're cleaning up, and when they finally finish up, you know, it's time to leave. So we would hang around. I mean, we were in the restaurant industry too, most of the people I hung around with, so we understood how it worked, and we knew these people as well. You know, we had all worked together at some point, so they were all cool with it. But, you know, they had to shut down their system, and, you know, they had to cash out their bar and all that kind of stuff, so they had to get their last purchases in. And I had to purchase a bunch of alcohol at the very end of the night, just so I wouldn't be sitting there without a drink in front of me. It's just insane. And I'd come back to the table after that, because anytime they'd call last call, you know, everybody's sitting around the table like, well, you know, is anybody else going to go grab another beer or whatever? And everybody's just sitting there, just, you know, all laissez-faire about it. And, you know, as soon as I heard that, it was like panic mode. You know, I'm fidgeting around trying to figure out where my wallet is and everything. They're like, what's wrong with you, man? I'm like, I got to get up there to that bar and get, you know, order some drinks really quick, so I'm not sitting here without anything to drink after they close the bar up. And they're like, dude, it's not that big of a deal. And, you know, for me, it was a huge deal. You know, and like I said, don't have to worry about that anymore. And then on top of it, another thing that I was thinking about with this is that, you know, whenever I used to go up to the bar and would order those final drinks, you know, I would say probably 98% of the time that I would go up to the bar and do that, the bartender would be very rude. And the thing is, a lot of bartenders can be rude. I mean, it just comes with the territory. You have to have a thick skin to be a bartender. I mean, it's just the way it is. You've got a lot of people that come in, they're intoxicated. People that walk into bars can be really rude sometimes. I mean, you're just dealing with a rough crowd. Not everybody that drinks is rough, but you're just dealing with a rough crowd a lot of times when you're a bartender, and you're working late hours, you're working long hours, you're on your feet all day long. It's not an easy job. And you're not only are you making drinks for the bar, but you're making drinks for the whole entire restaurant on top of it. And you're washing glassware, and there's a lot involved. And 90% of the time too, bartenders just cannot leave their station. They're stuck behind that bar all night long. They can't leave. Number one, they've got to stay there and watch their alcohol. Number two, they have to stay up there and watch their tip jar and watch their bar drawer that's full of money. And three, they can't leave because they've got to continue to make drinks all night long. That printer does not stop ringing up all night. As soon as the bartender tries to walk away, that printer's going to go, and there's going to be another drink that's going to come up on it. So they're stuck, and they're stuck back there all night long. So when it's time to go, they're ready to leave. And I can't blame them for it, but how many times have you gone up at the end of the night, you're hanging out at a bar and they call that last call, or it's getting close to closing time, and you go up and you try to order a drink and you get some bartender and they're super rude and nasty with you about it, but you deal with it, and you're like, okay, I'm so sorry, when you normally wouldn't be that way. You're the type person who doesn't allow people to talk to you like that. I mean, you're just not a pushover. But in that certain situation, you are a pushover, and you allow them to do it because you're not going to let them not give you your alcohol. So you suck it up and allow that bartender to treat you like crap because all you want to do is get your alcohol. Now, I'm not saying that everybody out there in the world has done this. I'll admit that I have. I've had bartenders talk to me like super bad and put me down and call me names, and I stood right there and was like, whatever, I just want can I please get my alcohol, please? I just wanted to drink. Once again, don't have to worry about that anymore. I'm not hanging out in any bars. I don't have to worry about any bartenders getting an attitude with me. I don't have to worry about rushing up to the bar at the end of the night and ordering 5 drinks and tipping the bartender $60 or $100 or whatever. I used to give bartenders ridiculous amounts of money. Now, anytime that I walked into a bar, I don't care how many people were up there. If I walked in and waved my hand, that bartender would come right over there and grab me whatever I needed. Because I used to tip them so well. But I was in the restaurant industry, I understood it, and we all took care of each other. It's just the way the restaurant industry works. But, once again, anytime that I went out, I didn't go out and just spend $30, $40 going out to the bar. If I went out to go drinking, I spent a couple $100, and that's any time that I went out to drink. I had no self-control. I had no self-control. I'd walk in telling myself, I've only got $40 to spend tonight. Do not spend any more money than that. And, in my mind, I was thinking, I am not going to spend any more money than that. But, go in there, have a couple of drinks, start feeling pretty good, start, having a couple more drinks, feeling even better. And then I'd get to that place where I was super warm and friendly with everybody, and I wanted to take care of everybody. I was very hospitable whenever I was drinking, especially in those types of situations. And, I just wanted to, just be nice. And, number one, I would start buying everybody drinks. I didn't care. It's just, I felt so alive in those situations. It was like nothing else in the world mattered. And, I felt so important for some reason when I was in the bar buying people drinks, like I was saving the world or something. It's just absolutely insane to think that, going back and thinking about that now, I really did feel like I was like so important when I was buying people drinks. Like I was doing something like I was changing the world. I really thought I was like doing something so big. And look back at that now, I wasn't doing anything good. As a matter of fact, I was harming the people that I was buying drinks for, but I just, I was ignorant to that. I didn't know. it's just crazy. And I'm so glad that I don't have that life anymore, that I don't hang around in those places any longer. And thinking about the people that I know that still do go out to the bars every single night, because I know a lot of people, that I used to work with that still every single night they're at the bar, and they're people that are my age and they're still going out every single night and hanging out. Although a lot of those people have passed. I know a lot of people that have passed away. There was like a group of people that all used to hang out downtown. I'd say probably maybe 150 people, and these are like, all restaurant guys and gals, just all restaurant people for the most part. Not everybody was, but a lot of us were. And there were a lot of people too that weren't restaurant people, but they got so caught up in the bar life that they left their jobs. And I'm talking about I know some people that had really high up their jobs. They were making like 6 figures a year, doing very well, working for the government. And, they got caught up hanging out downtown, going to the bar every single night. They just got caught up in that lifestyle. And I know a certain person I can think of right now who was working for the government, making 6 figures a year, lost their job, and next thing you know, they were working at the bar, and they were a bar back, washing glasses and carrying up cases of beer up to the bar every night and changing kegs out and stuff like that. And they took a drastic hit to their salary because of that. I don't know where that individual is now, but I have no idea. I do know that for a while their life just kind of tanked. They lost their wife and their kid, and just everything fell apart. And it was all due to alcohol, every last bit of it. This individual, and the crazy thing about it too is this individual wasn't a big drinker, in the beginning. Over time, they started going out, they started enjoying going out, they started drinking more and more, and before you know it, they were a full-fledged addict, and drinking every single day, and then everything just kind of fell apart. And I watched that whole thing unfold. I watched them go from not being a big drinker to drinking every day, and then their whole life just kind of fell apart. And I know I'm all over the place, but I'm still kind of sticking to that whole bar theme. It's just, once again, I'm just so glad that I don't live that life anymore. I'm not hanging out in those bars anymore. I'm not, spending all of my money, hard-earned money in a bar. For what? You're not gaining anything by hanging out in those places. Yeah, you make friends and things like that. And, I did have a good time at the bar and whatnot, but, I can have fun here at my house. I don't have to go out to have a good time. And as a matter of fact, looking back now to back then, most of the time when I got to the bar, all I wanted to do was go back home anyway. I was just sitting there thinking about, I need to come up with an excuse so I can get out of here because I just want to go back home. Number one, I didn't want to drink and drive. Most of the time when I was at the bar, it was super late at night, so I stuck out like a sore thumb anyway when I was driving home at night. And, I was afraid to drink and drive. I just didn't like doing it that much. So a lot of times I would just leave my vehicle, and then, and that's a whole other realm of all of this, that I can talk about today as well, because it has to do with this whole bar thing. And like I said, today's video is going to be titled Last Call for Alcohol, but this video really has to do with just not going out to bars anymore, and, getting away from that lifestyle, and how much better our lives become when we're not hanging out in a bar every single night. Because it does. And like I said, that whole thing where I'd go out to the bar and I was like, I'm just going to have 1 or 2 beers. You always get that, hey, let's all go out. We would have a really big night at the restaurant. We did a wedding or something like that, or some huge plated dinner that was like a really, really, really big deal. Like we did a dinner for the mayor and for the governor, or we did some pretty big high profile dinners throughout my span at this place. And, after a big night like that, I'd take the guys out. Let's all go get a beer. And I'd tell them, I'm only going to hang out for 1 beer. That's it, and I'm telling myself that's all I'm going to go have. And then I'd go out, and before you know it, here it is, $600 later. And like I was talking about, I thought that I was only going to have 1 or 2 beers and drive myself home. But what ended up happening is, $600 later, and I'm stumbling around seeing double. I couldn't drive, obviously. Well, I guess I could have, but I didn't. And I'd have to get somebody to either give me a ride, or I'd get a taxi to give me a ride home, which is a story in itself. And I can't remember if I've ever told the story about the time I got a taxi. If I've told that story, let me know in the comments. I cannot remember if I have. I got a taxi cab one night and ended up falling asleep in the back of the taxi cab. If you guys know that story, let me know. If not, I'll tell it to you. But once again, I would either get a friend to give me a ride home, or get a taxi ride home, or Uber or something like that. And I would leave my car. So then the next day, not only did I have to go to work, but I had to leave my house an hour early because I had to get, to where my vehicle was, which was usually downtown, completely on the other side of town from where I live. So I'd have to drive all the way on the other side of town to come all the way back. So, like I said, I'd have to leave a whole hour early just to go get my vehicle. And any time that I went out to the bar, I had to go get my car the next day because I never drove home. And like I said, it was always this, I'm going out to have a beer or 2 or 1 cocktail, which turned out to be, I had 100 beers, 20 shots. I'm just kidding. I didn't have that much, but I drank a lot, and I got wasted drunk and then left my vehicle downtown again, another night. And then had to get somebody, and that I never had plans for the next day either. I'd have to be at work that morning, and I didn't know how in the heck I was going to get to my vehicle. I always figured it out. Always did. Always had somebody that came through and would come pick me up. But, just being a horrible planner, and waking up the next morning with that anxiety when you wake up and realize, oh my gosh, my vehicle's it's right in front of the bar. And, you're laying in your bed and you live 30 minutes from the bar and you've got to be at work in an hour. That's not a very good feeling. And normally what I would do if something like that happened is I'd have somebody come pick me up and just drop me off at work, and I'd go get somebody else, one of my guys, to drop me off at my vehicle that night where my, downtown where my vehicle is at. And then guess what happened magically after that happened? They'd take me downtown to get my vehicle after work that night, and then I'd say, you want to stop in and grab a quick beer real fast? Let's just go in there and have one. And I'm sure you guys know how that turned out. Guess what would happen? It would get left downtown again. My car would be down there 2 nights in a row. Because I would go back out and drink again. And then the next night, I was like, there's no way in the world I'm doing this again, because I'd hung out 2 nights in a row at the bar, went to work with 2 hours of sleep or something like that. I just couldn't physically handle it anymore. So I would go home after that. But, just all of the craziness that happens to us when we're hanging out in bars all the time, spending all of our money, dealing with the last call for alcohol, rushing up to the bar and buying, 3 shots and 2 beers because we don't want to be left with nothing in front of us when they finally do shut the bar down. Leaving our vehicles in front of bars, having to get a ride home, having to get a ride back up there the next day, leaving your keys in the bar because you got so drunk, forgetting your phone at the bar and having to go up there the next day and get it, forgetting and leaving your ID at a bar. And man, those nights like that, when especially if you went, to like a big city or something, and you guys hit 10 bars that night, and you wake up the next morning and you can't find your debit card, you don't know which one was last, and you've got to go hit or call every single one of those bars, and most of the time you can't even remember half of them. You're just walking down the road and you're just like, let's go into this place, and you just walk into another bar, and the next day you don't even remember the names of these places or even where it was at. You were just kind of wandering around through downtown in some city and just happened to bump into some bar, and the next day you don't know where your bank card is, or you lost your phone. Like I said, or you lost your keys, or you lost your hotel key, or whatever. I mean, just all the craziness that happens when we're going out to bars or frequenting bars all the time. Our lives become messes. And, not just that, but the amount of money that we spend in bars too. It's just insane. I used to spend so much money going out to drink. For what? And then I got to a point where I was like, sorry guys, my insulin pump, but, I would get to a place where I was like, I'm not going out anymore. I'm not spending any more money. And then all I did was come home and drink by myself. I mean, I was damned if I did and damned if I didn't. That's just the way it worked. Either I went out and hung out with people, or I came home and I just drank all alone and would get super depressed. Because I was just sitting there all by myself, just getting wasted drunk. All in all, it was just a very sad life. Just every aspect of it was sad, especially there towards the end when the alcohol stopped working altogether. It wasn't doing anything for me anymore except making me feel sick. And the sick part about it is that the alcohol was making me feel so sick. It would make me feel nauseous. It would make my stomach hurt. It gave me a headache. I just felt horrible. I felt like I was literally pouring poison inside of me. I mean, that's just the way it felt. And instead of going, you know what? This alcohol is not making me feel well. It's the alcohol. I knew it was the alcohol. The worst part about it is I poured more alcohol in, thinking I'll just drink more and that's going to make me feel better. It's just because my tolerance has gotten so high. And since my tolerance is so high, I just need to drink more. And if I drink more, I'll get that buzz that I'm looking for. So I would just pour liquor down my throat. And like I said, it wasn't getting me anywhere. All it was doing was making me feel sicker and sicker and sicker. I mean, to the point where I was, I would take a shot, puke, pour another shot, and force it down. And I did not want to drink it. But all I was trying to do was trying to get that feeling. And it was not working. Like I said, the alcohol had stopped working at that point. It was not doing anything for me except making me feel ill. I'm so glad I don't live that life anymore. I'm so glad I've gotten away from that. And I know whoever you are out there watching this right now, if you've gotten sober, I know you are so glad as well. Like I said, today's video is kind of one of those reminder videos of what's lying out there for us if we go back to drinking again. It's a life of hell. It's such a sad, lonely, guilty, shameful, sick, nauseous, and I know I say nauseous all the time, but anytime I think about drinking, it's like the first thought that comes to mind is just nausea. I'm nauseous all the time now, but man, I was always nauseous back then. And back in those days too, I used to just throw up. If I felt bad, I would just throw up. I didn't have to stick my finger down my throat or anything. I could seriously just turn my head and just puke on command. I threw up so much that I had trained myself to be able to throw up on command. I probably can do it. I just don't. Because, if I was to throw up now, I might accidentally burst a varices or something like that. And I don't want something like that to happen. So there's something going on with this microphone too. See, make sure this is all good. Okay. But anyway, guys, like I said, I just kind of wanted to talk about this today. And like I said, all the things that we don't have to worry about anymore. If we've gotten away from alcohol, we don't have to worry about that life in the bar anymore. We don't have to worry about going and staying at the bar till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And then, like I said, at that moment that we never want to hear, last call for alcohol, ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling, and then there you are rushing up to the bar to go buy a whole bunch of drinks because, like I said, you don't want to be sitting there empty-handed because, God forbid, we have to sit somewhere without a drink in front of us. It's just insane. Like I said, I am so blessed that I'm sober today, and I hope that you feel the same way as well if you're sober right now. And if you're not sober right now, and if you're watching this and it's something that you're really considering doing, you know, it's something that you want more than anything else, and you've been drinking every single day for years upon years, and you're so tired of living that life. I completely understand. I know where you're coming from. That's no life to live, and I completely get it. Just do me a favor. If you're thinking about getting sober, go speak with a doctor first. Quitting alcohol or benzodiazepines abruptly can be life-threatening. It can. It can cause it can cause you to have a heart attack, stroke. You can have seizures, and a lot of people have seizures. You can start hallucinating because of it. I mean, just bad things can happen. There's no reason to put yourself through that. You know, with medicine, the way that it is these days, you know, that they can help you through this period, and they can make it to where, you know, I'm not going to say that it's going to be completely pain-free, but they can make it, you know, relatively comfortable for you. You know, and you know, the more comfortable that it is, you know, the more likely that you're going to be successful. You know, and there's a lot of people that might disagree with me about that, because, you know, some people think that the more uncomfortable that it is, the more or the less likely you are to go back because of how horrible the withdrawal period was. And I can understand, you know, that method of thinking as well. I mean, I completely understand it. And I don't know the right answer to it, you know, but the thing is that speaking with a doctor, just make sure that you're being safe about this, because there are medications that they can put you on that can help prevent you from having a seizure or having, like, you know, something seriously life-threatening happen to you while you're going through this. And once again, I'm not even saying that going to a doctor and talking with them is going to make this, you know, be completely pain-free or make it be where, you know, nothing's going to go wrong. I can't guarantee that, because things can go wrong at any time in your lifetime. You know, it doesn't have to necessarily be when you're quitting alcohol or quitting a substance or whatever. I mean, you could just be walking down the side of the road and everything's honky-dory, and, you know, a car veers off the side and hits you. I mean, just things happen. But, you know, once again, speaking with a doctor, just being safe about this, you know, at least you know that you spoke with someone, and the chances of you coming out on the other side successful are going to be a little bit better by doing so. So just please speak with a doctor. And, you know, last but not least, you know, just a little disclaimer. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not affiliated with any healthcare professionals or anything like that. I'm just a normal dude who has AUD. And, you know, I drank very heavy my whole entire life since I was a kid. And because of that, I ended up with cirrhosis of the liver, chronic pancreatitis, an enlarged spleen, all kinds of problems with my pancreas now. I've had to have so many different surgeries on it, distended gallbladder, burst varices multiple times. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I could keep telling you all these different health problems I've had because of all of this. And it's because I would not stop drinking. And, you know, I had plenty of opportunities to do so, and I chose not to. I chose to continue to drink. And I didn't want to seek help. I did not want anybody helping me, because I thought that I could do it myself. And I was so wrong, because I could not do it by myself. You know, it wasn't until I ended up in the hospital and went through a medical detox in the hospital while I was in there for pancreatitis and, you know, internal bleeding and all that stuff that I finally was able to stop. What ended up happening is I was in the hospital for 3 weeks while I was sick, and when I got out, I just didn't go back to drinking, and that's how I did it. I just didn't go back to drinking. I wish I could say I had some, you know, great success story and I did all these things, and that's not what happened. I ended up in the hospital, and they put me on a bunch of medication, and I don't even remember the first week that I was in there. I basically slept the whole entire week, the first week that I was there, and it wasn't until after that first week that I remember anything. They had me on so many drugs through that medical detox. You know, I was just completely out of it, but I got through it. And like I said, they helped me tremendously, because I had tried so many times in the past before that to get sober, and I never was successful. The furthest amount of sobriety that I ever had before this was 2 weeks. And that's it. Every time that I would get sober, it was usually 2 days, 3 days, maybe a week, if I was lucky. But for the most part, it was always, just a couple of days. But the furthest I ever got was 2 weeks. That's it. I never got a month, 2 months, anything like that. So from the time I was a kid, 15 years old, somewhere around there, I was drinking every day for the most part from about that age until I got sick at the age of 42. So, basically 27 years of just hardcore drinking. And I know you're thinking, you're 15 drinking? Yeah, I was. I was working in a restaurant. There were a bunch of grown-ups around me that bought alcohol for me. They did not care. Hung around with all of them. I'd go over to their houses, hang out. There was alcohol in the restaurant. I mean, there was just alcohol everywhere. And it was a different time back then, too. It was just, it was easy to get my hands on alcohol. There was a bootleg man that I used to go to. If I couldn't get it from anywhere else, I could go to the bootleg guy and get the alcohol. So there was always a way for me to get it. And, ruined my health because of it. And the reason I come on here every single day and talk about this is to try to help others not do the same to their health as well. And to help those that are sick because of this, and to let those that are sick know that they're not alone. That there are other people out here that have illnesses due to this too, and that our life can go on. Just because you get a diagnosis of cirrhosis or something like that does not mean that your life is over. Life can carry on, and we can continue to live our lives. But anyway, like I said, guys, last call for alcohol. We're not going to have to hear that tonight. You're not going to have to hear that tomorrow. And you're not going to have to hear that this weekend either. Let's stay sober one more day. I know I don't want to go back to hanging out in bars again and dealing with some bartender being a jerk to me because, I asked for a beer, 2 minutes before they closed. Don't have to deal with that anymore. And if we stay sober today, you won't have to deal with it either. Thank you so much for being here today, guys. I really do appreciate it. And until tomorrow, I will see you all then. Hopefully it warms up a little bit tomorrow. And I hope it's not raining. I really want to go back down there and sit down to film my videos. So anyway, like I said, thank you so much for being here, guys. And until tomorrow, I will see you all then. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your night. Love you guys so much. Bye-bye.